All right, everybody ready to kick it off?
Sir, yes, sir.
Yes. Um, I think there's a couple of you that Anita and Ryan, I don't directly remember. My name's Brian Phillips. I'm an NRA training counselor. That's why Rob wrangled me in here. I kind of like to do training, but right up front, doing this Zoom thing, although I've been doing it for over a year on my work, this is the first time of teaching a class with it. I'm supposedly supposed to learn to do this because I have an important class to be getting back out to clients here directly. So good experiment here. Along with being an NRA training counselor, I'm also an NFAA archery instructor. By default, level 1. That means I let my level 2 expire. Doesn't mean I don't know what goes into the level 2. I just expired the card. So we have here Jonathan. I don't know how many of y'all know Jonathan. He's an NRA shooting instructor and as well a graduate in National Camping School shooting sports director. I think he's good for what, another 2 years? And we have, this is Jamie. She's a really cool college girl. They are helping us out. So I assume everybody got the copy of the Cub Scout Shooting Sports Guide. So you have the new one. There aren't many changes, but it is new as of October last year. And there are a few important changes. I want to try to go for 4 hours today. Oh, one more thing. You all did basically sign in with Rob. I don't know if Rob got you commitment forms. I have to kick myself to be more exact about this. When we do training, okay, we never charge for training, but you pay for your training by you lead some shooting sports for the scouts. And in this instance, it's a very important scout population, and that's Cub Scouts. And these shooting sports for Cub Scouts are just as important as all the way up through venturing. Okay, this is where it all starts. So some of the things I say may not make complete sense to some of you, but there's a reason for things, okay? I was saying earlier, I am really lousy about remembering breaks. We should be having a 5 to 10 minute break every hour. And if nobody speaks up, I'm likely to cruise right on through it. We're going to try to shoot for 4 hours, though if we're going over that, and because I don't mind going over, I would rather hear from each and every or all of you as questions come to your mind. We'll try hard to not go down those rabbit holes, okay? However, let's, as we go where it's relevant, speak up. And it's on these little thumbnails, it's kind of hard to see if anybody actually raised their hand. So speak up, don't be shy. In fact, if you never speak up at all, that makes me wonder if you were paying attention. And if you're going to get your card, you got to at least pay attention. Right, Ryan? Ryan's over there hiding behind his name and those earphones. Good to see you here, guy. So, everybody ready to dig in? We're going to go page by page with the manual. And Rob, you'll throw that up there. I thought you were going to share that, but you all have your
set that up for screen sharing, Brian?
That's up to you, Rob.
Well, let me go snag it.
Before I start there, I want to say a word about COVID, because I think it affects all training these days. Maybe, in fact, it's over, okay, like so many people believe. However, before your day camps or whatever, check. And I think archery in particular, not to mention slingshots, is very hard to teach without getting close to people, right? Have that in mind. BB guns too. Using that coach pupil method they talk about in here is a good way around that, and kind of requires that you teach the parent first. I don't know how much experience you all have, but who learns better, parents or scouts?
Scouts.
Scouts. It's a lot easier to teach the scout, and then later on, the scout will teach their parent how to do it right, right? Okay.
That's right.
The other is a word about youth protection. Need I belabor that anymore? Extremely important. Too many situations have proven we have to stick by our youth protection. And in fact, it kind of goes into shooting sports. It's not said in the manual here. It is said in the BSA shooting sports manual. Hopefully people are going to look into getting a copy of this, okay? And on the other side is the Cub Scout shooting sports manual. You need to have two people managing a range. You need basically your instructor and a range safety officer. Your range safety officer is dedicated to looking at safety, okay? And I would really like to start pushing that heavily for Cub shooting sports as well. It is important because at day camp in particular, there's so much going on all at the same moment, right? So, can everybody imagine what our purpose is for Cub Scout shooting sports? Well, in the NRA method, we basically want to teach the Cub Scouts how to shoot, right? In a safe manner.
Mhm.
What's also important is the effective manner so that they learn some proficiency. And thereby out of that comes self-esteem and self-discipline. And that leads into all the leadership skills. So there's a lot to it, right? I'm not telling anybody here anything new, I hope. So who can be a Cub Scouts shooting sports leader or instructor, range master? Who knows? Can anybody? Can we just hand Rob a baton and put him out there?
No, we need one of age 21 or older and somebody that's gone through the shooting sports introduction and training.
And actually, I think it says 18 or over.
Oh, does it say 18?
However, I would lean toward the 21.
So would I.
Because for one thing, range safety officers need to be 21. Okay. Does anyone know about range master assistants? This is actually also written into the program, just like NRA. Range master assistants need to be at least 15. They need to go through and pass this same training. They are not allowed to run a firing line by themselves. Okay? If you got a couple good range master assistants that you've been working with, though, that at least lets you sit back and one eye is being RSO and one eye is kind of gazing around for who needs a little extra help, right? So I personally strongly believe in that system for scout shooting and general NRA. I believe in that. And it's a way we start our young people getting trained, because I don't know about you guys, but I'm already looking at backing out all this. I've been preparing my replacements for years now because I can't keep doing this. I got a back that's rotting away rather quickly. So I have to be replaced. And I'm looking around, and there's at least 4 other people on that screen that should be considering the same issues. you need to be replaced. And to be replaced properly, you have to hand off the golden nuggets of your knowledge and experience. Range master assistants are how you can do that. Sound good?
Yes.
Just my little PR work. Okay, so who can do these shooting sports? Participate. Anybody know the rules? Anybody read the book before now? In general, it's Cub Scouts.
Yes.
Go ahead, Bill.
That's what I was going to say. It's Cub Scouts, but no, I have not read the book.
Okay. Our real issue of what has changed this year is about Lions.
Oh, all right.
They did not allow Lions to do shooting sports, which personally really ticked me off, because most of the shooting sports venues I assist in, I don't care if it's a little tiny brother, sister, or whoever. If I have enough supervision on that line, that kid's going to get to shoot. That's all there is to it. That's how we get more scouts, right? Now, Lions are allowed to participate, although I think they got it kind of backwards. Lions are allowed to do archery and slingshots, but not BB guns. Now, you all have done at least some level of range mastering, correct?
Yes.
Tell me, what is probably the safest shooting sport of the three?
BB guns.
BB guns.
I'd go with BB guns.
Okay, whoever wrote that rule, I'm sorry, they never led Cub Scouts on a shooting range. Because my experience, archery is the most difficult and the most potential for those arrows to go God knows where. And they really can. Okay, but we're going to start Lions right out there. And guess what? Compound bows are allowed, depending on the range master in charge of that range. Okay, so keep that in mind. Lions and tigers are required to have their parental, adult, or guardian partner with them. Now, I've heard a lot of grumbling about this, and personally, I grumble too, because the first thing I see that kids need when they come to my range is a mom or dad ectomy, because mom or dad are generally not all that helpful. There's a rare few that are, but with lions and tigers, we are required. They have to be there, okay? The smart ones will let you do your job as an instructor, okay? And they'll pay attention, and I will generally point right out to those parents. Can I help him or her through this first one? And please, you watch carefully and do this same method, okay? Skipping the you running them through the method is the best way to get away from, if we still have COVID raging on, you don't want to be too close to them. I'm sorry, they're all, you know, you want to hug the stuffing out of each and every one of them, but we can't. And we can't even when there's not COVID. Okay. So lions can't do BB guns, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but the rest of them can do right on up through air and pellet rifles, correct?
No.
Oh,
Oh, give that man a cheroot. That was a trick question. Who can do air and pellet rifles?
Weeblos.
And Webelos and Arrow of Light. And I recommend, and I also recommend for the lions and tigers, have them separated. They're in different patrols. So the patrol that comes to your station is all one rank or the two of those lower ranks, right? And the same, you know, Debbie and I I don't know how many years now, worked out we needed to at least have the webelos separated for archery. That works beautifully. And personally, I love working with those webelos. It's really a pleasure. Okay. There have been some new venues of shooting sports come out in BSA. And those have, I hope we're past all the confusion. I remember the first one, when the first rumor came out that there were going to be pistols at National Jamboree. And of course, all the Scoutmasters interpreted that as, oh good, we can all shoot pistols now. No, venturing can with the proper training and supervision. That was a national event only deal, right? So there's come out what? Chalkball, the Airsoft is the other big one. You know, the little plastic yellow BBs, okay? You can shoot them in little rifles or pistols. I mean, even our own troop, I won't mention Troop 54, they were out very next day after hearing that, they're out at Murnane running around shooting each other with airsoft. And I said, you can't do that. Nope, they saw no problem with it whatsoever. And I think we all know we still have particularly troops out there doing things that are strictly verboten, they're strictly unsafe, dangerous. And that brings up the other thing. Along with being familiar with this shooting sports manual for all of BSA, the Guide to Safe Scouting. On my computer, the icon, the shortcut to the Guide to Safe Scouting is right next to the shooting sports manual. And we do have to make sure there's no point to even printing out the Guide to Safe Scouting. It's evolves so constantly. And if you ask me, I think that is a good thing. And too many people aren't even bothering to look at it, unfortunately. So airsoft, etc., cowboy shooting, etc. No, don't do it. Just for information, for anyone that doesn't know, that airsoft shooting experience is mainly for they can shoot a pistol at targets like pop cans, wear protective eyewear, etc. Okay, so we got by our preamble stuff. We talked about lions and tigers. Personally, I thought lions coming back was a huge, great move. And I'm one I also think bringing females into the whole works is an extremely great move. Now we get into the awards. Has anyone seen these new awards yet?
So Brian, I have the shooting sports guide up. If there's something that you want to show, just let me know and I can go to that page and share the screen.
How about page 8 as the shooting sports awards? Now, for one thing, instead of belt loops, and this was the case before last year, notice on top, level 1, and this is just like the old belt loop system, okay? Only they have their main patch for Cub shooting sports. There's one for each rank, so that as they go through their ranks, there's successively supposedly more difficult requirements to obtain that. The patch is level 1, and then you see the 3 pins. Those are level 2 for each discipline, and that pin can be put on that patch. So they can, every year for day camp, their way through, they can earn that rank shooting sports patch. Conceivably, I think they could earn, if they're doing a week-long day camp, they can do archery and BB gun. And I would throw the challenge out to you all as range masters. There is no reason why any kid that's not halfway trying cannot go home with both their patch and the pin. These requirements are, you know, I've been a little bit miffed about particularly the pin requirements, okay? But the reality is there's no reason why they can't all get it. It's too simple, okay? But they have awards, and we all know scouts will do just about anything legal or not as long as they get a patch for it, right? So I think we covered everything there. Yes, we'll get to targets, don't worry. We're going to start out with BB guns. Maybe you do, Rob, want to go to page 9, because they do have these nice grid boxes. So, and if I were you, I would have these in a little, at least when you're planning your week, have these requirements so that you make sure you address it, okay? Explain what you should do if you find a gun, recite the 4 safety reminders. We're going to get there. That's basically the NRA Eddie Eagle program. On an approved range, explain how to use the safety mechanism, demonstrate how. That should be first day. On an approved range, demonstrate qualified good shooting, eye dominance, okay? They should be shooting BBs or arrows or dog food their very first day in camp. If you do not get that shooting device into their hands, you have lost them. They won't want anything to do with you after that. So, do we explain all the requirements and rules up front the first day? Use up the whole 45 minutes doing that? What do y'all think? No. We're going to spread it out. We're going to look at what do they have to know day one. Well, they have to know our range safety briefing, which is kind of built into these. But let me back up a moment and cover those, because they're not all written down. Who knows what's the most important safety rule they all need to know?
Don't touch the gun until told to.
Okay, that is an important one, but there's even before that, okay? And that is, and get this in your brain, the first thing to say to Cubs: no running or horseplay on or near any shooting range. And if they have any questions, you can tell them this is going to apply all the way through venturing, etc. Same rule. Rule number 1. In day camp, you've all seen it. They come charging like a herd of wild horses at you. And I know particularly where we have our day camp, ankles twist and, you know, then the kid's out of business. They don't get to have fun and learn. And around this sports, these shooting sports, we can't have kids that are being wild and crazy. They have to have their wits about them, because there is a very definite air element of danger, right? So get that across to them. Who can go on or off the range? Really anybody, as long as you ask the range master or designated gatekeeper. I'll let parents come out there, even on a Webelos range. 1 or 2, if they got a camera, I'll say, okay, and I want you to come back out through the gate, which is the next subject. Do not go over or under any rope lines. Got to go gated or open spaces only. And this, you know, it doesn't seem like that makes so much difference with Cubs. I mean, what the heck? They can walk from their shooting station right to their target. But see, as they go up the line, and particularly when they hit Boy Scouts, they need to have a significantly higher level of self-discipline, okay? We'll come to that a little more later. But that's the idea. The absolutely necessary safety rules, day one. Okay, how to hold the bow. I probably don't even show setting the grip on the first day. I will cover 3 Boy Scout fingers under the arrow. And anybody that's looking at their book, you're going to see, you don't have to turn to it now, but there is a picture with the kid holding the bow, and they got the old pointer finger above the arrow, other 2 fingers below. Does anybody know why it's recommended not to do that anymore?
No.
That's how the arrows are pulled off the arrow shelf. And what immediately goes with that 2 and 1 finger deal is the thumb on the other side of the back of the arrow. Everyone, you know, the old story, Hiawatha, and you saw that's how Indians shoot. They grab the end of the arrow with 3 or 4 fingers and they pull the arrow back. Well, I don't think Indians really shoot that way either. Nobody does. The thumb and that finger above, the finger above the arrow is what rolls the string. If the string rolls to the left for a right-handed kid, what does the end of the arrow do? It comes right off the arrow shelf. Invariably, 99 times out of 100, that thumb goes to steady the arrow on the string. What happens? The arrow immediately comes off the arrow shelf. No thumbs, 3 fingers below the arrow. And my strings, I always have a knock bead that the arrow goes directly under, and the knock of the arrow can push up against that bead. So those 3 fingers under the arrow can push it up against the bead. And I bring that up now because it is an important safety thing. And you will see in the body of the manual here, it directly describes 3 fingers under the arrow. Only the picture shows a kid with the old 2 and 1 configuration and their thumb in there to boot. That thumb is for anchoring back here in your cheek or jawbone. Can't have it up against the arrow. And it's very hard for the kids to learn that. That's probably one of the hardest part of it all. Okay.
So Brian, do you have any suggestions, advice for bows that are not configured that way? That don't have that knock bead?
Configure them that way. That's my suggestion. There's even bows that have, you know, special little roller beads to put their fingers on. I kind of like those for brand new beginners, but you know, I don't care what high adventure activity you're doing. Review your equipment way before the first day on the range. You know, climbers, they got a whole set of rules, for God's sakes, about how long a rope can be used in its lifetime from manufacture, let alone how many times doing exactly what before that rope is not allowed to be used anymore. And I'm like, you know, I have no idea what all those rules are, but I love knowing that the Scout program has people in charge there that know those rules and follow them, and they're reviewing their equipment way before they get out there. You know, archery in particular is one. What do you want to do to reel archery strings before you go shooting? You got to wax them.
Yeah.
You know what happens if you don't wax the strings? You end up getting 1 or 2 seasons. I've got strings I've been using with the Cub Scouts. These strings are 10, 12 years old. They're still just like new. Now, and we'll look at equipment specifically a little later because there's another kind of string, okay? So you're going to do your range safety briefing, and you're going to decide, and each day you can do that range safety briefing quicker. And then you have planned for yourself each day, what new lesson do I add? That new lesson takes no longer than 2 minutes. Okay? You may spend 5 minutes going through everything you've already covered because you review it every time. Okay? But the new piece is 2 minutes, period. If it takes longer than 2 minutes, you're putting too much on there. Okay? Are they going to know exactly what you talked about when they go onto the range after that? No, they're Cub Scouts. And they're there, and you're going to teach them. Okay? But you did explain it. Everybody knows edge?
Everybody knows edge.
Good. That apply, I mean, I haven't found anything in life that doesn't apply to. It's what it is. You know, and then all the stuff in here about how long Cub Scouts can pay attention. And I tell you, even Lord Baden-Powell said, any good chap that can't get his point across within 5 minutes should be shot. Because if you're going over 5 minutes, they're not listening. Hopefully you guys aren't that bad. Okay, we start on BB guns. Level 1, requirement 1. Level 1 is the patch. Okay, this didn't used to be spelled out so clearly. I particularly like that it is. Okay, they call it the 4 safety reminders. 4 things. That's a lot for a Cub Scout to remember. And this is about what are you going to do if you find a gun somewhere? Okay, and Rob, that's page 10. You got it. Stop. You see a gun, stop. Don't touch it. Leave the area. Tell an adult. That may seem overly simple, but that is absolutely critical. Okay. The next thing, the parts of a gun, there's even a good poster in back where you can post that. Yes, they should be able to identify the basic important parts. In particular, the trigger, the safety, and the muzzle of the barrel where the projectile comes out from. And have a clear understanding that where that muzzle is pointed is the absolute most critical point, okay? Because from there, does anyone know the 3 fundamental rules of safe gun handling? Are y'all not woke up yet, or? Okay, this is straight out of NRA. Everybody, repeat after me. Always keep the gun pointed in a safe direction.
That's what I was going to say.
I didn't hear you say it, Bill.
I know it, but that's what I was going to say.
Okay, number 2, and this one, stick your finger straight up in the air, your trigger finger.
This
Get
is
it
my safety, sir.
Where this finger is critical, just like the muzzle, okay? Always keep your finger off the trigger until ready to shoot. Unless you're Chuck Norris in, what is that, Walker, Texas Ranger. Then you can have your finger around the trigger at all times. Nobody cares because it's not a real gun. Number 3, always keep the gun unloaded until ready to use. Now you guys need to memorize these because every word, a lot of money went into developing these words. So why is it vague about a safe direction? Most of the scouts know. They know downrange. Well, you point the gun downrange.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if you're not on the firing line? Where is the safe direction?
Ground.
Ground. No.
Okay. That's actually old school military. Nowadays, the next best safe direction is up, directly up. But if up is not available, like if I had somebody living in an apartment above mine, I would not consider up a safe direction, okay? That safe direction is completely fluid and variable in every situation. And as an instructor, start getting yourself into thinking, okay, this is a firearm. What's the safe direction? And sometimes you got to think a few moments, but there is usually a direction. I think keeping your finger off the trigger is pretty self-explanatory. You don't put your finger on the trigger till you have your sight alignment with the target and you're ready to start letting out that breath for the trigger squeeze. Then your finger goes on the trigger. Always keep the gun unloaded until ready to use. What in the heck does ready to use mean? That definition covers a lot of stuff. Myself, generally, I have a gun in my pocket at all times, except when I'm sleeping, and it's ready to use. And it's loaded, okay? If I don't have a gun on my person, it's not ready to use. It's unloaded. Very simple, okay? And especially when we got a bunch of kids involved in a shooting sports activity, that unloaded until ready to use is very important. Otherwise, when do we load the gun? Anyone know that? On the firing line.
Got it.
Okay. There is a separate thing we'll talk about here later. That's a little bit confusing, but then they follow out. They turn them into 11 altogether because NRA has eight elements to safe gun usage. Know how to use a gun safely. That's why they're out there with us, so they can do that. We are the ones responsible to make sure that gun is safe to operate. And we should damn well make sure that gun is safe before we have it out there. Use only the correct ammunition. There are different sizes of BBs. Eye protection, I mean, quite obviously. Personally, I don't know why the eye protection requirement has not come to archery yet. You look at any of the national competitions, etc., U.S. Archery Association, everybody's wearing eye protection. And if you think, well, you know, what can happen? A lot can happen. And I would lean toward eye protection for archery as well. It's not that difficult. And then you talk about saving one kid's eye. The whole country, one kid keeps an eyeball because you're making them all wear eye protection. I think that's worth it. Don't rely on the safety. Why do we not rely on safety mechanisms? Bill should know this.
A safety mechanism is not always your best friend.
Well, that's one
It's
way.
always
Anything
loaded.
mechanical
It's
can
always
wear
dangerous.
out over time.
Yep,
It's a
And he said-
mechanical device that can fail.
that's right.
And hence, we refer back to number 1, 2, and 3. Always, always, always. Those are much more effective than a mechanical safety. If we do those first 3 things, we're pretty safe. However, knowing the rest of these things are important. Wearing ear protection. That is actually in the Cub Sports Manual now. Wearing ear protection. Why? I mean, a BB gun, that makes a pretty big report when it goes off, you know. I was looking at this one and I chuckled, but then I thought for a moment, and I have in particular on the archery range, you know, even though I do my best to tell everyone, especially the parents, please be quiet, show some respect for the shooters so that they can focus on their bullseyes, okay? If for no other reason, even BB guns, if they all had ear protection, you want to make sure they can hear your commands, okay? But if they all have ear protection, they're not going to be so distracted by all that extraneous stimuli that try as you might, you cannot completely control. I mean, there's an element in the universe called parents. Ugh.
That's right.
Now, number 10, this is the one you ask most people, what are the fundamental rules of safe gun handling? They chime right in with, know your target and what is beyond. That is actually an old NRA, and I think the Hunter Safety Course still has that right up at the top. It's important, but like I said, there's been a lot of money put into exactly wording those first 3 safety edicts. Store guns so they're not accessible to unauthorized persons. I mean, that shouldn't require any more explanation. Eye dominance, and you can see in the lower right of what Rob's put up there, this kid, does everyone know what he's doing? Putting a little triangle out in front of his face. In NRA classes in particular, I always have these people like Jonathan here that have heard 24 other ways to check for eye dominance. Okay? Well, we can save a lot of time. We have one way to check for eye dominance that is approved not only in NRA, but BSA as well. And that's the little finger triangle, put it out in front of them. They try to focus on a distant object, bring those fingers back toward their face, and you see which eye it's in front of. That's their dominant eye. Now, in an NRA course, we would spend the next 2 hours talking about eye dominance, cross eye dominance, changing eye dominance. And cross means the eye dominance does not match their handedness, okay? There's a whole separate science to that. I think at this level for Cubs, we have to start here, okay? And if you see a kid that's having problems, try to casually from out to the side look and see which eye is open the most to aim. And that will tell you your story. Sometimes we have to cover that eye. Sometimes right-handed kids shoot left-handed.
Sure.
So what? If they shoot better left-handed, I don't care. I consider left-handed shooters pretty good. Now you get into NRA pistol, you are required to be ambidextrous, either hand. So they got to jump ahead on everybody else. But we're going to address it at this basic level. And it is very effective. If you don't do this, you're going to waste at least their first 2 sessions on your range. It's going to be a complete waste of time for them. They're going to feel like a total failure, and they're not going to come back on the 3rd day. We don't want that to happen.
So Brian, is establishing eye dominance, is that a good technique first day? Run them through the safety rules and then show them eye dominance and then get them going?
I would tend to do that on the 2nd day, but depending on an instructor's style, I wouldn't fault you for covering that on the 1st day, because there's probably going to be a couple kids in each group that already have heard about this, and they're going to start asking about it anyway. And for sure, you know, I said, like, spread your lessons out on successive days. If a kid asks a question, that is the most important question of the day. It must be answered, because if you don't answer his question or her question properly, guess what? They're not going to listen to another word you say. It's that simple. So a lot of this, you have to, it's like range safety briefing. In NRA, RSO class, everyone has to devise their own range safety briefing, because we're all individuals. And right from the start, you write your range safety briefing. You analyze, does this cover all the points? Okay, they may hear it a different way from different range masters, but they're still hearing the same message. Okay. So it can be first day, it can be second day. Eye dominance is, you know, it really is on the edge of safety there that they know. I myself, I like to watch the kids and see what I analyze about what they're doing. And that's why I would put the eye dominance off a day. If I got plenty of time, you know, I'm going to fill that time with good stuff. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, 5 elements of taking the shot. They do alter this a little bit from NRA. The first one would be hold control. And here they call it the shooting shoulder, which you have to establish eye dominance to know which shoulder to shoot from, correct? Number 2, breathing control, okay? Now, they say something in here. Those that have the book, please look at it. It is like that second sentence, first sentence after the comma. Stop breathing. Okay, I don't care what the rest of the sentence says. You just told a bunch of Cub Scouts that to shoot, they have to stop breathing. Okay, for one thing, NRA never said that. And I don't think anyone that knows how to shoot ever said that either. That is I really question that wording, okay? For anyone that doesn't know, you shooters, you know, okay? The breathing control is you're oxygenated enough, you're loose, you're comfortable, but steady. You're letting a breath out slowly, about 3/4 of the way through the breath. You pause and squeeze the trigger. Now, what do you think a Cub Scout is going to get out of that description versus stop breathing before firing a shot? I really recommend don't tell the kids to stop breathing because they will. And then it even goes on and it says, you know, do not stop breathing for longer than 8 to 10 seconds. Okay, you just told your whole patrol of Cub Scouts to stop breathing for at least 8 or 10 seconds. That's what they heard, okay? Please be careful of that. That 8 to 10 seconds, that's about, okay, if you have paused a few times and you don't have the shot by then finger off the trigger, let loose your sight picture, and sit back and take a few breaths. Get reoxygenated. Then go back, acquire your sight picture, finger on the trigger, and pause. Don't stop. A lot of people think a good shooting stance is to, yeah, you got to get rigid as you can because you got to hold that gun right on the bullseye. Is that how it works?
No.
Well, no,
Doesn't
not at
work
all.
that way.
Not at all. And I strongly recommend that kind of description of let your breath out about 3/4 of the way, pause, and squeeze the trigger. It's not just the words, it's the tone, the whole delivery has just explained to them exactly what to do. And I've never seen a kid not get that. I never tried to tell them to stop breathing, but I can only imagine. Okay, sight alignment. You heard me say sight alignment, sight picture. Sight alignment, quite simply, the line up of that front sight with the rear sights. And here we could go into a whole discussion about, oh, well, you know, it's much easier for a kid to use a scope. Does anyone actually believe that? I hope not. A lot of people think, yeah, let them use the scope. No, not only do they not get the concept of what is in science referred to, the medical world, as vernier acuity. There is a brain skill and function involved with lining up those sights. That's why they have evolved the way they have. If you get a kid shooting and he misses this whole developmental brain skill, guess what? Probably never going to get it. And you just cheated them out of a huge part of their shooting career where they could have a lot of fun. I don't need to go into the different kind of sights and all, right? Okay. What we're concerned about is that they are with the dominant eye, hopefully, lining up those sights so the vernier acuity, there's an equal amount of light on either side of that front sight. Where do the eyes focus? Anybody know? Target, front sight, back sight, where would you focus? Nobody knows. Front sight. Is a human being able to focus their vision on those 3 different points in depth?
No.
All at once? Physically impossible, can't be done. So the best hit is focus on the front sight. Of course the target's a little blurry. Of course the back sight's a little blurry. And that's where some intuitive creativeness of the sport comes into play. I mean, for me anymore, the target, both sights, it doesn't matter. It's all blurry. I don't know how I even hit the target. My glasses help, okay? But, you know, I've gotten used to that. Now, the next point after sight alignment that they don't have here is to align those aligned sights with the target. That's your sight picture, your target picture, okay? Trigger squeeze, we talked about that. You all know trigger control, what that's about. It is very important that they learn good trigger control. There are lots of bad habits. The book here describes the trigger should be halfway between the fingertip and that first knuckle joint. That's a great place to start. Each and every individual is going to find a different place on that fingertip to put that trigger, which works best for them. Starting right in the middle of that first joint, that's the place to start. Everybody know about follow through. This is the one most people never learn. Once you pulled the trigger, you're done, right?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm.
No.
No.
Pause.
What's the best way you can see whether or not your projectile penetrated or pierced the target? By continuing to look through the sights.
Stay aligned.
Because that's where you'll see the hole magically appears, right?
Mhm.
So, and in archery, this is more important than guns, okay? Because guns, the bullet is actually out of the barrel fairly quickly, okay? An arrow moves slightly slower. So there's more room to inadvertently move the bow and thereby put the arrow off target. My cue with archers in particular, but I've also used it with Boy Scouts on their rifles. I'll get in their ear. You are a statue. Repeat after me. I am a statue. Only my fingers loose the arrow. And they get that. Boy, they're a statue. And I've heard people, you know, I'm a robot. Fine. Whatever visualization does it. A lot of them need some kind of visualization there to put it into play. All right, level 1, requirement 4, properly storing the BB gun. Yes, a little bit of discussion here. Do you have time for every kid out there to help you put away the range? I never have.
No.
Okay.
Never.
No.
However, okay, how should the guns be? What should it look like on the firing line when they leave before the next group comes in? Did you ever stop and think about this? Well, it's important to think about it now, okay, before you're out there, right? You won't find this in the Cub Scout book, but I think a little explanation of the NRA way of looking at it. And to me, this applies really to guns, to bows and arrows, tomahawks. I don't care, you know, what the shooting instrument is or throwing instrument. You need to, before you ever touch that implement, you need to make sure it is safe. Okay? In the military, you'll say, show clear. What does show clear mean, Rob?
You know, to show that the weapon isn't live, it's safe, it's not loaded, you're clean, you're clear.
Okay. A lot of civilians, I say, show clear. They look at me with this blank look. I can see their mouth forming. What? Because people that haven't been in the military have no idea what show clear means. Okay. So an NRA idea here is make the gun safe. See that the gun is safe. Okay. Now, these are 3 elements. You can write down whatever, they are important. There are 3 steps to making sure the gun is safe. Number 1, safety mechanism activated. Not all firearms have safety mechanisms, so they add if applicable. Number 2, make sure the ammunition source is removed. Some guns that may be a magazine. Some guns that may be drop open the bottom of the internal magazine. It just covers any kind of shooting instrument. Make sure the ammunition source is removed, okay? And number 3, of course, that's where the show clear comes into effect. The action is open. The chamber is visible to you. And you can look in there sometimes with a simple gun. You know, the thing is, you know, put your little pinky chamber checker in there to feel if there's a round in there. That's not necessarily a good habit, because a lot of guns, you put your pinky in there and you touch or just stir that gun wrong, guess what just chopped off your pinky? Okay. Looking in there, sticking a pen in there. If I was Bill, I'd keep you, not you, Bill, the other Bill. I would keep you 2 hours talking about how you need to have a flashlight in your pocket all the time. You don't need a flashlight. You do need to know that that chamber is empty. Okay. You got to know that. Otherwise, it's like, and you know, myself, I get older. I have so many guns. I am never sure what stupid thing I may have done. I do this every time. Any shooting instrument, safety mechanism if applicable, remove ammunition source, check the chamber is clear. Just 3 things. It's all you got to do, right? So if the BB guns are laying on the hay bales, if you use hay bales or a bench, I would recommend BBs be done at a bench, okay, with a chair or bench for them to sit on. If that BB gun is laying there, let me see, we can't see the chamber, right? Do we know if that ammunition is removed from that BB gun?
No, we don't.
You got that, Daisy? Yes. Daisy BB guns, the primary scout weapon. 300 rounds of unabridged fun and ecstasy, right? There, I would argue that you cannot be sure that that gun is empty without completely taking it apart. So how do we get around that?
Have the safety on.
Well, the safeties definitely should be on.
Yeah.
You can also leave the lever wide open because, yeah, see how it's open, it's flopping. The trigger can't be pulled and it can't be fired with that lever open, okay? BSA actually has written in waiver about that we are allowed to use these Daisy BB guns. And hopefully that will remain, because any other kind of BB gun rifle is incredibly expensive nowadays. And we know below Webelos, they can't use a pellet rifle, okay? So we are able to use our Daisies. If the Daisies are sitting out here on the hay bales, they're all pointed downrange. That lever is flopping open. The safety is on. That's stored for the next group. And we should instruct them to prepare the gun just like this, to one last time pull the trigger, make sure it's not cocked, okay? Leave that lever open there, laying on the hay bale. Thank you. So, make sense? That's how we cover requirement 4. And yes, we should be taking better care of the BB guns than this one, let me tell you. It'll shoot though. Oh, and we can show them how they would unload the gun. Okay.
Little door up here. For
Little
BBs
doorway
going
there. You point the barrel down and shake it, and supposedly all the BBs come out. But we know from the internal feed mechanism, you can't be sure all the BBs came out. You can even fire it a couple times, and there may still be, you know, half a dozen firings, and a BB shows up and it fires. So just be aware of that, right?
Pretty empty, but I still don't trust it.
You can leave it by the door all the time.
Not that one.
Okay, level 2. And now notice here again, we do not have lions on the BB guns. If it were up to me, we would, particularly if you have enough supervision. There, almost anything I think about shooting sports can be fixed with enough supervision and training. Education fixes most problems, right? So you can see in the boxes there, do you have that, Rob, page 13? It shows what each rank has to accomplish to get that patch, okay? Now notice the Tigers, they only got to do 3 things. The Wolves and Bears, they got 4 things to do. Now what's added for them is tell 5 facts about the history of BB guns, okay? How do we cover that in our presentation? Each day for me, I've done my range safety briefing, I've covered the lesson for the day, and I'll give them a tidbit about history. When we identify the parts of the bow, it's not quite as straightforward with BB guns, but bows and arrows, there is a long history of nomenclature, parts, etc., that have to do with archery. So I will tell them, you know, the riser, okay, that's pretty straightforward. If they're Webelos, etc., we can go into the parts of the riser. And then there's these things that grow out of the riser, okay? We know those as limbs, correct?
Mhm.
In the old days, they called those leaves. And a lot of the kids, they will like to remember that, the old name for that part. Well, that's a piece of history about archery that gives them one up. What's the little notches where you put the string in? Well, it's called the notches. See if anyone knows. Does anyone know another old-fashioned name for those little notches? The keeps, because that's what keeps the string. They'll hear that, and boy, they know something more that most people don't know. They really love that, okay? So covering that history is not that difficult. When it comes to range commands and signaling, I just make a general statement here. Short and simple. These are Cub Scouts. And if you go word for word what they're describing in this manual, you're going to have Cub Scouts standing there staring at you going, what'd you say? Okay. There's like, they'll later go into here like 4 levels of whistle commands. I would recommend even using whistles with BB guns. Okay. How many Cub Scouts going to remember in the excitement of that day what those 4 different whistle commands are? I'll bet you they can remember 2. They can remember don't shoot until you hear 1 whistle blast. What if you hear 2 whistle blasts? Well, that means stop. You got it. Stop means cease fire. By the way, cease fire does not mean that you have to put the equipment away. Cease fire means back to ready stance or put your BB guns down, pointed down range, lever loose. Okay? Then further directions from there tell them what to do if they need to do anything more. It may just be that they can commence firing. 1 whistle blow. Quite simple, and I think more effective than trying to get them to remember an encyclopedia of stuff. They're out here to shoot, not out here to remember all kinds of rules, right? You'll notice in the Webelos requirements, okay, bears and wolves don't have to. Webelos have to start learning the positions, okay? And they do have here on page 14, nice little pictures of the shooting positions, although they also show the offhand standing position. Everyone know what that is? Standing up, shooting from the shoulder. How many Cub Scouts should we have standing up, shooting from the shoulder? I would argue that our camps are not the venue for that position. That's an advanced position even in the NRA, okay? Those other 3, like usually we're either gonna have a bench or they're gonna be prone on a tarp. Ultimately, when they learn well, prone is probably the most accurate position. Bench is the easiest and best for them to start learning from. You know, yeah, it'd be great if you could have little individual shooting benches at day camp like our up at Baker, okay? But I think most districts aren't that rich.
Are they going to rebuild the ones at Baker? Because they have nothing at the moment.
Are you going out there?
No, that was Baker at Cub Fun Day last weekend or 2 weekends ago.
Okay.
They're gonna work on it. It's gonna take time.
The building's gone.
Yeah, it was taken out by a large tree, and there's definitely plans to rebuild, but it's an expensive process, and we're actually writing grants for that now.
And there's a lot of issues there, but getting some benches up there would probably be a good sing out, shout out to send up the line, because those shooting benches really are invaluable. Okay. The next thing to look at is these targets. Okay. In BB guns, and toward the end of the manual, you have some printables of all of these targets. Okay. And the scoring, of course, is simple and ready at hand, starting with the tiger there, okay? Personally, I believe in blank paper plates, okay? Because what I know and what you get from NRA, along with things like learning vernier acuity, okay? The visual cortex of the brain goes through a lot of development learning to shoot, okay? The brain does math that's unbelievable in aiming at targets, okay? When you aim at a blank target, what is your brain having to do or trying to do? It's trying to determine where the center of that plate is.
Mm-hmm.
So you all got out there before camp and all, and you sighted in each and every one of these rifles so that each and every kid would have an absolute 100% chance of hitting that bullseye. Am I correct? I don't see anybody
No.
nodding.
I don't think it's going to work.
Now, you know, even in advanced shooting, okay, what is far more important than the bullseye is the group, okay? With a blank paper plate, they're shooting their shots at that, and you tell them, now you shoot at the same place every time. You shoot at what you think the center is, okay? The accuracy of their shooting will show up in the group of the holes on the target, okay?
Correct.
Have them focused on that part. If you have them focused on bullseyes, okay, most of the kids are going to walk away disappointed. Now, archery, completely different. In archery, I recommend these guys for all of them. Nowadays on eBay, you can get this big target here for what? A couple bucks a piece, $1.50 a piece. You can get the hard feta paper original targets for I don't know, $3.50 a piece. Okay, buy 6 to 8 of those. You glue those with contact cement on cardboard, and those targets, one round of targets, will get you through the week. And I argue that is not too expensive at all. For one thing, the kids see those targets and they go, wow, that's like really cool, right? Notice how much target there is to hit. At least half of them are hitting the target the first round. Very, very important, okay? In all deference. Now, these little targets that are notebook paper size, they are more realistic for BB guns. But then there's still the issue of don't make them think the bullseye is the only option. Blank paper plates not only teach their brains to shoot better, they get more satisfaction out of it. All I got to say. And there I talked against the BSA Cub Scout shooting sports book here, but oh well. Again, range commands. You know, they got an example here on page 15. Load, ready on the firing line, commence firing, cease firing, clear all guns. Yeah, those are all fine. I think with Cub Scouts, kind of like the range safety briefing, describing more precisely what the behavior you want to see. And yes, every time you end up with no voice by the end of the week because you've been saying the same 5 sentences over and over and over and over again. The first one you say the most is, no running, walk. That's what you say the most. Everybody get that? I hope you're saying that, because I know kids and they want to run to those targets. That's where the injuries happen. No running. I'll let you all go over the brief history of BB guns. I think the story I like best, and they really trimmed it down in this version, but about Daisy BB guns. Does anyone know where Daisy BB guns came from?
Nope.
It's the Daisy Irrigation Manufacturing Company. They made irrigation implements, primarily windmills. So they had all of the sheet metal bending equipment that they made windmills for. So then, you know, one of the owners had the bright idea of seeing air guns. Hey, we could make a spring-loaded BB gun. And they did. Probably the first of the true spring-loaded impact-propelled BB guns. And they made history from there. And it only took them, like the very next year, they weren't making windmills anymore because Daisy BB guns sold like jelly beans. I mean, you can all, I mean, you know it from there, right? Yet the Olympic Games didn't have air guns even till 1984. It's kind of interesting. Archery. What is mostly true and dear to my own heart. Archery. The core sport of scouting. Very important. And I want to present a method of teaching archery. And this method, I think the most of it can go all the way down to tigers and lions. Been a number of years. So again, I want to strongly, strongly, strongly recommend you do it this way. What do they need before they can go through the gate? Permission. What do they do after they go to the gate? They choose and go to their shooting place. Okay. What are they going to do after that? And this is where my range commands commence. Okay.
Listen to the range officer.
Up your shooting place. And I say, shooting stance, please. I want to see shooting stance from everybody. The range is that way, young man. Yes, much better. Okay. And actually, the right leg toes could be angled a little bit more toward the target, like the front toes. Okay. Notice the shoulders are doing the aiming. The shoulders are lined up with the target. And this is one of my safety rules was don't pick up a bow, don't pick up an arrow until we tell you. When I see that whole line has good shooting stance, and I want everybody to look at each other so they learn from each other. And by second day or third day, you'll hear some of them will go, look at your right foot, look at your right foot, because they're coaching each other. That's okay. I don't want them talking about anything but archery, but it's okay to coach each other. Then we'll say, all right, pick up your bow.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's going for the big stuff. All right, set your grip. How do we set our grip? Well, we obviously gotta demonstrate this part again, don't we? Okay, we set our grip. Be kind of loose. If you're right-handed, it's going to be your left hand holding on to the bow. Okay, you're going to dangle that arm straight from the shoulder down to the handle of the bow. The bow is going to be on a flat plane with your hip, wherever that comes to, depending on the length of your arms. When you get that set, tighten your grip. Okay? Now let me ask everybody if you know archery. Is this the USAA method of holding a bow? It's the Cub Scout method, and if you try to get Cub Scouts to hold a bow properly, you're going to be working on hold the bow for the first 4.5 days. Okay?
Yeah.
The proper way is the V of your hand directly in line with the face of the handle. The long fingers curl knuckles against the handle. The thumb presses. And what do you think happens to most people when they hold a bow like that and shoot? The bow directly jumps right out of their hands. Okay? We can't expect them to do that. So we can tell them how to get a proper grip. And you got to keep saying it over and over. Don't let go of your grip. Grip the bow. Don't let go of the bow. Okay? Because when it comes to getting the arrow, then they got to let go of the bow to go grab the arrow. Doesn't work that way. Keep your grip. And then we say, and I demonstrate it, there's a little quiver of arrows that's duct taped to our rebar posts there. They reach over the bow, grab an arrow by the nock, pull it over up onto the bow, knock the arrow right under the nock bead. Then we want to see 3 Boy Scout fingers directly under the arrow. And then we want to go to ready stance. Let's see ready stance there. Down. I want to see those arrow points. No. Ready stance. Your bow is vertical in front of you. I want to see those arrow points below the rope. That's a point we'll get to in a little bit here too, a rope. We want to see those arrow points below the rope. For one thing, that helps them adjust how far behind the rope they should be. Okay? If you don't have a rope or a board or bales or something, what happens? I've watched them. Well, they're moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, this kid is leaning way out over the firing line, because if he can get 12 inches closer to the target, that's obviously what's wrong, right? Well, once he's all stretched out there, he has no chance whatsoever of hitting the target. Yet what has he just exposed himself to? The flying arrowhead
Injury.
environment.
Injury.
We got to make sure that's not happening. So that arrow points below the line keeps them measured. And of course they don't maintain it. You have to constantly tell them individually, okay, I want to see you move back from that line a bit, back from the line, back from the line. Now, once they've started on their 5 or 6 arrows from this first set, now I don't stop them every time and make them do it all over again. But that first shot of that round, they're at least right then going to know what the pieces are that they should be thinking about before each and every shot. And I guarantee you, the kids that are getting the bullseyes are the ones that are listening and doing exactly what you told them to do. Now, the whole thing about the bow laying in front of you, between you and the targets, not off to the side, okay? I don't know how many times have y'all seen when they're loading the arrows onto the string, where do those arrows point? They end up pointing, how in the world a kid ends up completely turned around, aiming at his parents while he's loading the arrow, okay? They don't know. They can't pay that much attention. So if we teach them a method that naturally keeps the arrows pointing at the target only, it naturally gets the arrow up on the right side of the bow. If they're left-handed, it's still going to go up on the proper side of the bow, okay? And they're still, you know, and you're constantly having to say, once you keep those arrows pointing at the targets, even when you're loading, you got to say it 1,000,000 times, of course. They're kids. If it was their parents, you'd have to be saying it 3,000,000 times, guaranteed, okay? Because I'm telling you, kids are smarter than us. They really are. They learn 3 times faster than we do, okay? They learn this stuff and they're going to have it. So enough said there. Any questions about that method? Okay. Here for level 1, demonstrate how to follow archery range safety rules and whistle commands. That's pretty straightforward, and your safety briefing is going to cover that every time, every day they come out there. And hopefully you're going to teach your range master assistants to deliver that range safety briefing, because by the 4th and 5th day, you have no voice left, okay? And it keeps, those assistants should be paying just as much attention or more to the safety briefing and the skill learning as the other kids, okay? Yes, they are allowed to use compound bows. This is what BSA used to have for compound bows. That's a 70-pounder. Your average Cub Scout is not even going to be able to hold that up, let alone pull the string.
Most
Okay?
of our Cubs aren't 70 pounds.
No, they're going to tip over. How many strings are there on this very simple compound bow? There's 3 strings here, okay? A kid that is barely being able to knock an arrow on 1 string and keep it pointed in the safe direction. Now, what he sees in front of him are 3 strings. Is it really wise, do you think, to start Cub Scouts on compound bows? No.
No.
Do y'all know why compound bows are compound? They're compound because so that when it's hard to pull back the string, but once the cam tips over, once you're at your draw, it doesn't take much energy to hold it back there. That's what Cub Scouts want to do, is hold it back there while they get their aim. And in doing that, they're missing the whole point. They set their aim at the ready stance. That's when they aimed. Whatever happens after that ready stance is all related to that ready stance and how properly they were set up in it. There's nothing more to the aiming. They hopefully will learn the muscle memory, and one of your second or third day lessons is arms up level with your shoulders. Thumb back into your cheek, okay? Are you supposed to hold it there? Actually, from ready stance, it's all one movement, including letting go of the string. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now, are they going to get that right off? Probably not at Cub Scout level. But I guarantee you, all the good Boy Scout archers, it's all one movement. Up from ready stance to letting go of that string, and it's all immediate, same speed, no pause, because they already did the aiming at their ready stance. The Cub Scout's not going to understand that. But if we start to teach them that, they have a better chance of being there. Now, I don't know if you all know, but I usually always let them do the old Boy Scout merit badge requirement as a challenge, okay? You got to get 50 points within 30 arrows at 30 feet, okay? I think it was year before last, or well, year before last, one kid on one round of 10 arrows, because it takes, 3 rounds to get them through 30 arrows, okay? He had 4 bullseyes within those 10 arrows. And I kid you not, that kid from day one, he was not an experienced archer at all. He came up and he quietly said, "Would you help me? I don't know how to do this. And I really, really want to." I said, "So you listen to everything we say and do it as we say." Okay? Within that week, 4 bullseyes in 1 round of 10 arrows. God, I should have wrote his name down. That is ultimately the spirit. Now, can every kid do that just from listening and doing their best? No. This kid obviously had something genetic that makes him, more coordinated in his brain muscle connections. Okay, phenomenal. But that's what's possible. Okay, a beginner is great. By the way, anybody know, and it's not in this new book here, what's the distance that Cub Scouts shoot at?
15 feet.
15 feet. You got it. BB guns or bows and arrows. Okay. Boy Scouts go up to 30. Anybody know where adventurers go out to? 120.
120.
It's more fun. Okay. Again, your rules and commands, keep them simple, please. You can go your 2, 1, 3, 5 whistle blasts, and the kids will never have any idea what you're meaning with your whistle. I strongly recommend 1 for shoot, 2 for stop, nothing more. Your other commands are like, take your shooting positions, show me your shooting stance, pick up your bows, pick up an arrow, pull it over the top of the bow, knock it right below the knock bead, okay? And it's that same way every time. For me, my commands, I don't vary. Your commands, There may be slightly different wording, but you're saying the same thing, and you're saying it the same way over and over again. When you get Boy Scouts out on the 22 range, guess what you're most often going to be saying? Where's your feet? All the way through, where's your feet? And you're going to have to say it to Cub Scouts too, where's your feet? And they stop and they look at their feet, oh, 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 and they get their feet set. Now, no, they weren't able to just think of that themselves. And it sounds kind of stupid for you to say over and over and over, where's your feet? But that's the cue they need to check where their feet are at. When it comes to things like only release the bowstring when you're commanded to shoot, dry firing a bow. They say now you can do it with modern firearms. I will not drop a firing pin on an empty chamber. I don't care whose gun it is or what it is. The same token, you dry fire a bow, you run the risk of that whole bow shattering right in that kid's face. And this is where even between shooting rounds, between arrows, the whole time, you're watching for this. When you see a kid pulling that string back without an arrow, hey, don't pull the string without an arrow. And they heard you. They put your bow down when you're done shooting. Oh, put it, because they want to please you. They want to get it right, right? Okay. A lot of these safety rules are up to us. We are in charge of the equipment. We need to make sure the equipment's safe and ready to use. Okay, and now we do have our general range rules that are very similar to the BB gun shooting. Here's some rules of contention. These are in the book. However, always wear an arm guard and finger tab or glove. You see if there's a Rob, if you could put up page 18. There's 3 nice pictures. There's a finger tab, a finger glove, and a forearm guard. You need to have available for every one of your shooters this equipment. As this rule says, and I quote, always wear an arm guard and finger tab or glove. Well, number one, I can guarantee you it's going to take them about 7 times longer to figure out that finger tab versus a finger glove. From there, I can assure you a beginner using the string glove is going to miss most of the times, whereas they might have actually got the target. The forearm guard, you have it available for all of them, okay? And that is one where when I see real beginners that aren't getting it, will require them to put that on, which I just said we're required to require all the time. Now at Cub Scout shooting level, most of them using the equipment figure out very quickly that at least finger guards only get in the way of their accuracy. And if that kid decides not to use that safety equipment, I'm not arguing with them. They're trying and figuring it out. Now, forearm guards, if their stance and their draw is done correctly, they will never hit their forearm with the string. Okay? My dad was like, see, does that hurt? Yeah. Well, don't do it that way. Oh, okay. Have a straight line, shoulder out to the handle there, right? There's also a point of once it's out. Some kids have these odd arms where that elbow kind of comes out the opposite way, okay? While you're holding the bow, you can actually rotate that elbow out a little bit, okay? Now, that all being said, the proper way to get the stance, those forearm guards are not a bad idea at all. And mark my words, you are required to have that safety equipment available for each and every shooter. Okay, enough said. See there, they put it number 15. Always walk, never run. That goes up to number 1 for me. They also recommend on, and this is a USAA thing, okay? They carry the bow out to the targets with them to gather their arrows. I see absolutely no point to that. That's just making something more difficult and more confusing. If you have your shooting station set up good, so there is something they can lean that bow on, hang it on, then they don't have to worry about it. And guess what? They have 2 hands to put on those arrows. One hand to cup the points, the other hand around the shafts. And they're all walking back with 2 hands on their arrows. Okay? Now, arrow collection, coming up to get the arrows. 90% of all archery accidents, injuries happen on approach to the targets because they run and they slip. And so what's pointing out there to catch the nocks of those arrows? Their face. Not a good combination. What we need to be thinking about, and I don't think this is something we can expect the kids to think about. Each and every target, there is a 3-foot blood circle out in front of that target. Only the kid that's gathering their arrows is at that target. Or you are instructing them how to count the points or getting them, okay, now look toward the camera. Now point that arrowhead I just gave you right at that bullseye so mom gets their picture. Okay, those are important pictures. Otherwise, no other kids are up close to anybody else's target. They're slipping when they're running up to the target, and there's always hand against the target, pull the arrow out. So where's the knock of that arrow going? Directly behind them. Where Timmy is bending down right there to see how close that arrow was, and he gets that knock right in the eye. Okay? That's why we keep a distance from those targets. Make sense?
Mhm.
That's where the injuries happen. The other injuries happen, I don't know if you all have heard the infamous incident, the only incident I ever had on the archery range. It was one of our assistants. He was not goofing around. He was going up the hill to gather arrows. He was doing exactly as I said, throw the arrows to the bottom of the hill and then recollect them at the bottom of the hill. Only I should have also told him, do not come down directly on top of the arrows. He caught an arrow knock right in an unmentionable place. It was terrible. And he still gets harangued for that. And who should be harangued is me, because I didn't teach him how to avoid that. And he's such a jokester, everybody thinks it's because he's not paying attention. He was paying attention. He was doing his job and doing it rather well. And I'm still very sorry that he got hurt. Okay. So level 1 requirement 2, types of archery bows. We just went over seeing the compound bows. Okay. Now, you all will see in your camp equipment, here, you can hold these up. Okay. One here is the Goblin, the infamous from Cabela's. Okay. It's better than nothing. And the bowstring is not a real bowstring. It's twine.
You can kind of see that.
I'm not sure if you should wax it or not. One thing to be aware of is these twine strings compared to real bowstrings. The string is wider than a real bowstring. So you have to pay attention to which arrows you use. Okay? Everybody see a difference between these arrows? Little short guys, long skinny guys. And if you were close enough, you'd actually see that these little short guys, the nock actually has a wider space than these bigger arrows. That wider space is made for going on these twine strings that aren't real bowstrings. Okay? So if you're going to use these, I recommend you use the right arrows. That's why so many of the camp arrows all have busted nocks, because they're the big arrows. Makes sense? Now, and personally, archery being one of my first loves, I think if you're going to teach them how to do archery, teach them with a real bow. Okay? Now, these are kind of old-fashioned. I collected them myself over the years. These are the bow strings, real strings, that some of them have been, 10, 12, 14 years old. I wax them every time before using them, okay? This is about a 10, maybe 12-pound pull. Of the Webelos range, all of them can use this. The littler guys, okay, like lions and tigers, okay, we're back to the cloth string, but it actually looks, it's a real bow, okay? Now, I just saw in our last archery activity where there was a bunch of new bows, kind of red and blue or red and black, and they're from Bear too. I was kind of disappointed. And in the riser, there's a big hollow hole, and the arrow goes through that hollow hole. Okay, now this bow, this red and blue bow, is, I mean, it's bigger than this. It's a big bow. Okay, no, they're regular recurve bows, and it's about as strong as this. Okay, now if you got a kid that's small enough to where they need to use this bow, they're going to rather use this than that huge thing that they can't even hold vertical because they're not tall enough. Okay, now the other point is using an underpowered bow. What happens to the arrows if they do miraculously make it to the target? They bounce off. Okay. Now, fortunately, they don't have enough motivation behind them to bounce all the way back to the kid's eye, which can happen, which is why I do recommend protective eyewear. Okay. When they shoot an arrow, and particularly when they start getting it right, okay, what does that kid want to see? You want to see that arrow stick in that target, okay? That's the immediate reinforcement of archery. It goes thunk and it sticks right there, okay? I think that is so extremely important. Rob, if you can trade those red and blue things off for something usable, keep your ears and eyes open. Because,
Including the goblins.
I'm not kidding, because, I even had a couple kids pull on those red and blue things after they had used our other bows. And they're like, nah, I'd want to use that other one. Even this little guy has enough force to stick an arrow in that target at 15 feet. That's what kids want to do. This little size bow, I got 2 or 3 of these. I don't mean to sound like I'm bragging, but a little 18-month-old girl. Okay, she only shot 2 arrows. They didn't quite make it to the target, but they were right in line with the target. And that little kid walked away grinning ear to ear. Okay, and she got to hold a real bow. Okay? Cub Scouts didn't join Cub Scouts to come out and play with make-believe toys. Shooting sports, I argue, are the main reason kids join Scouts. And they didn't join to come out and shoot toys. They came to come out and shoot the real thing. How to do it, they don't even know about safely yet, but they want to learn to do it proficiently. So at least have the respect for them to provide them with the proper equipment. Now, if you don't have anything better than the goblins, use the goblins and make sure you got the right arrows for them. And the problem with it is those right arrows for them, you get any kid with muscle, he pulls that arrow tip right back behind the face of the bow. And that is one of the most extremely dangerous things you can have happen, okay? When you have range master assistants, make sure you have some bigger bows available, because at lunchtime and before breakdown time, you let them get out there and shoot some real bows. And you give them a minimum of instruction as well, as long as they follow the safety rules. And that guarantees that next season, they're going to be right back with you, and you already trained them. Okay, it works. So enough of my soapbox about, please give them the right equipment. They deserve it. Okay, they really do. Compound bows, what would you guess? Okay, I get at least one of these every year. You know, tall dad comes up, says, I got my son's bow in the car. He wants to shoot that. Would that be okay? Oh, what's he got? Well, I got him that Wizard, whatever, from Bowtech. Thing cost $549. He's getting good with it. First off, I don't really care how good he is with it. Do I want that bow coming on my range amidst other kids? We can't do it. There is just a long list of arguments against, do not allow that bow on your range. For one thing, you are responsible and liable for all the equipment on your range. You have gone through and checked out all your bows. There's no dry cracking, no splintering, no fiberglass threads coming off to pierce a kid's hand. You are responsible for that equipment. You allow something completely foreign to come in that you don't know about, well, then you just lost control of your range. And I guarantee you that kid will not be able to shoot that bow as safely or as accurately as dad thinks he can. And every other kid on the range will be distracted from what they're doing, wanting to look at that bow. And jealous. And there all the bad feelings start. It's not worth it. And the same thing for Boy Scouts and their 22s. Dad's always got son's new Ruger 1022 in the truck. No, yeah, with a scope. No, we don't shoot those. We have these really nice and very accurate bolt action 22s so that each kid works on every round as close to the middle of that plate as possible. And that's what we have, and that's what we do. Has anyone ever had that yet where somebody wanted to use something bigger, better? Don't go there. Not worth it. Not worth it at all. And what I said earlier about, particularly in Cubs, we are creating the foundation for a lifelong skill here that generalizes to everything else in life and is as important as everything else in life. And we really owe it to them to give them the best start as we can. And that is going to the basics. Use a recurve or even a longbow. Anybody, you know the difference between recurve and longbow? Longbows come out straight to the ends. Recurves curve. And it recurves when you pull it back with the string. Okay? Just like iron sights on a rifle. We start with the basics. Any questions about that? Questions about locking up the equipment?
Oh, yes.
Don't come to lunchtime and leave those bows or those BB guns laying out there and you go walking off to get your lunch.
For years, I've put the bows and the arrows in the vehicle and locked it.
You know, myself, I just bring my lunch anyway, because that's my chance to get a rest, drink a couple containers of cold water, you know, and if my Boy Scout assistants want to shoot, I can be their range safety officer while I'm eating. And yes, and other staff come by. You know, I tell people, you know, well, sneak by on lunch. I don't let the kids don't get to shoot at lunch. Okay, that's for leader time. Avoid shooting into the sun. That should go without even having to be said. So now they go into more about the finger tabs, etc. Has anybody ever shot with those old finger tabs?
No.
They're pain.
Yeah, I hate them.
I remember, you know, those came with my first bow. You know, I had one of them real colorful Ben Pearson fiberglass bows. Dad got me, and I tried that finger tab like once, and I was like, heck with that. Now, the arm guards, they're cool. The finger gloves, when you get to Boy Scout level, they really do need to be using those because they're pulling considerable more weight on that string. And that's when they're, the other thing about a properly sized and powered bow, underpowered bows are not accurate. Accuracy comes from straight and power behind it. You can't do that with a rubber band bow. It won't happen. And thereby they won't learn how to do it. You know, and boy, there one picture here, what on page 18, this kid looks like a Samick or something like that. It is a very nice bow. And you know what, if I could get nice bows like that in the proper poundage for all the kids, I would do that. Because they're going to do better with better equipment. They're going to do better with big, pretty targets that they're shooting at. I think most of this we covered. Release and follow through. Follow through is the one thing that gets overlooked by most instructors and shooters. They don't even bother to think about it, but it's critical. Those kids that are going to get multiple bullseyes are the ones that understand follow through. I am a statue. It's that simple. The other thing that most often happens with archery, a poor follow through. And you won't see it unless you're looking carefully. And it can be however slight, but the bow will fall away to the left the moment they let go of the string. Well, they just pulled the arrow left. And where's the arrow going to go? It's going to go left. You know, left-handies, it's going to go right. Some right-handies, the bow will fall to the right, but usually it's to the left. Okay, that's a follow-through issue. The other one is release on the string. There has to be a sudden, complete, crisp release, not rolling off the fingers. Has to be arrow's gone, right? And that's the old-fashioned term is loose the arrow, and it's gone. Anything more? Well, then on page 21 here, we have the box that covers the requirements for level 2. I don't think we have to go over all those. You know, it's from identify, shoot 5 arrows again and again. None of these requirements specify a number of points that they have to achieve. There is no point requirement whatsoever. Okay? In fact, they don't even have to improve. They have to try their best. And I guess in a way I agree with that. And yet at the same time, call me old-fashioned, I believe kids need to have an incentive that are going to go further, that are going to go the next step. Hence, when I go out to camp, I got one pocket is full of, honest to God, real arrowheads. Anybody gets a bullseye, they get an arrowhead. And hopefully they got somebody from their group to take a picture, okay? The ones, when we do the 50-point challenge, they get these little expert marksman badges, okay? They're $1 a piece. It's not that big a deal, but it sure is to the kid, okay? And we do not make a big deal about starting into that challenge. And in fact, a lot of times we don't even ask kids if they're ready. Once they're over there off to the side, the assistant will explain them what they're doing and say, are you up to doing this? Okay? They can say no if they want, but choosing for the eligibility is all about trainer's observation of skill and ability, okay? Then I end up with Cub masters that think each and every one of their scouts should walk away with that expert marksman badge. Well, you know, life doesn't work that way because not all of them even want to try. It may not be their thing. So along with doing extra incentive, my point is we don't belabor it to make any of them feel bad, okay? And amongst the kids, I've never seen bad feelings in their groups as they go. Now, if one of them earns that badge, yes, before they depart, well, so-and-so and so-and-so here won the expert marksman badge. Let's all give them a round of applause. And they all understand that. It's simple enough. A lot of people like to go on and put balloons on the targets. I've done that. Balloons with little goodies inside the balloons. Figured out years ago, no, it can't be anything edible because you got diabetic kids, etc. You got kids with various allergies, so it can't be edible. It's got to be able to go inside a balloon. You know, what do you do? At the end of the manual here, there are all kinds of extra games. You know, it'd be nice if you had all the time for those extra games. But I tell you one word on those extra games. One year I'm up there at the rifle range at Baker with Boy Scouts, and you know they're changing their targets from the 22s, and I see an arrow, thunk, right in the middle of the rifle range, and I immediately said, "Everybody back to the firing line immediately!" And they all rushed. They didn't even see it, and then a couple more, thunk, thunk, right where all these Boy Scouts were just standing. And I'm like, what the hell are they doing? I had to send an assistant down to talk to Otto, I won't mention his name, to tell him, do not ever do that again. That would be horrible, just horrible. A kid catch an arrow from above? There's not a lot of thinking went into that. Slingshots. Anyone here good with slingshots? No?
Good.
Can we take a quick potty break?
Yeah, we can do that. What time is it?
It is 10:59.
We're doing excellent on time. Yeah.
Okay.
5 minutes, 10 minutes?
5's fine. I just drank a lot of coffee.
At least you're honest. So by my watch, I have 10:57. That would be by 11:02, at least by 11:05. Good enough for everybody? Take a break,
Yes.
get up, walk around, do something.
While we all eat.
Training equipment. Oh yeah, that's Bill. He's getting a little older.
You think if we yell loud enough, they'll just magically appear?
It's funny as there's some government meeting here in the news where, you know, they're having their webcam meeting, and the guy gets up and goes to his bathroom, right? Go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Where is? Uh-oh. It's not the NSA or the FBI, is it?
I cannot confirm or
Slingshots.
deny.
I have here a standard Cub Scout Slingshot. Well, actually, this one's more for venturing, but first odd thing you'll notice in the book, okay, I have to point this down, Randy. Sorry for crossing with
I'm
the
just your
muzzle there.
son.
Actually wrong, yeah. Just like bows and arrows, okay? Now, what you read in the body of the text describes holding a slingshot sideways. Then the pictures, of course, show holding the slingshot straight up and down. Personally, I don't remember ever shooting a slingshot sideways, but I don't know that it matters that much what the particular angle of the slingshot is, as long as it's generally pointing downrange. And the thing that worries me about slingshots, and I've been out there at Baker doing the slingshot range in the past, is it is so easy to muzzle sweep everybody with a slingshot. And that, you know, top of my argument, a lion is going to be safer with a slingshot than a BB gun. I don't think so. And here again, may be another example of where 2 people on that range minimum is vital, because it's so easy for it to aim any old direction. Okay, you can demonstrate a stand-up shooting stance.
No, I don't think that it's been a while.
Ah. By the way, the wrist brace is pretty much required. Those old-fashioned ones we did as kids, those are like really, really dangerous. And some of these new wrist rockets, as they're called, are actually very powerful. So what ammunition do we use with slingshots?
Dog biscuits.
Paintballs, puffballs.
Paintballs? Yeah.
That's what they did at Baker.
Yeah.
Wasn't there something about biodegradable?
Well, biodegradable is your social responsibility for sure.
Yes.
The recommended by BSA, and what I've always used is dog food kibbles, pinto beans. Okay, they're things that are biodegradable, and they're hard enough to where when they hit a can, either sitting on a rail or hanging from a tree, they make a ding, and they put a dent in the can, and you know, there's power to it. And it's not necessarily easy to hit a bullseye like that with a slingshot. So there is something to it. Right? When I first saw slingshots come on, I don't remember when exactly it was, but it's been during my time. I've never really known what to think about it. I know they're fun, but as I've gotten older and a little experience, the safety of these things really concerns me. They used to be one of the Sweet 16 of scouting. You know, if you're a responsible adult, well, how many responsible adults have you all seen today? Certainly not in this chat room. Yes, there are levels. I mean, even page 24 has the same grid for level 1 and level 2 requirements. I don't think there's any big point of going through them individually. eye dominance, you know, the same thing. Stance, and the stance is almost identical to an archery stance, okay? And it's what is from there most comfortable for the individual shooter. Breathing, you know, if they want to become good at it, all the breathing, hold control, trigger control is in, you know, where do you hold that pouch when it comes back? And I'm being serious. And where do you, you know, it says use, what I think it says use the left post as your sighting. Myself, I did a lot of slingshot shooting as a kid, got in a certain amount of trouble over it. I don't know, I don't even remember how we aimed them. I always thought it was an intuitive thing. But there is science to it. And you all have access to this. And I'm going to leave a lot of it up to yourselves. Again, the equipment being safe, okay? The old surgical tube and air tube stuff we use on these is critical because this stuff dries out. And if they've been sitting out in the shed and the heat and the freezing, etc., even more than bowstrings, these things are subject to wear out. You know, and I don't think I've ever experienced a band breaking on me. I've sure bought enough of them to replace them. But I would think there is a potential serious injury in one of those bands breaking. And it also, you know, they don't say it in here, but it leads me to think about eye protection. Although in their picture, kids got eye protection. And there's a lot of it, so many variables to this. I think I myself would approach it more as, rather than anything to do with hitting targets, it's having the fun of using this old-time shooting instrument, okay? If that makes sense. And if any of you are really good at slingshots, by all means, teach the kids to be as good as possible with them. And along with teaching them the safety and the responsibility, hopefully they won't be going around the neighborhood breaking people's windows and getting in trouble. I never did that, of course, but you know, street lights, little birds, you know, all these terrible things. You can look at page 27, particularly with the level 2 requirements. And if anybody has any big questions, please ask them. Because the next thing that comes to my mind to talk some about is what is a proper range, okay? A shooting range should have a firm backstop, okay? With anything of power, that backstop is preferably made of dirt or iron steel baffles that will guide the projectiles to gather into some magazine at the bottom. Jonathan, you wanted to describe what you do with BBs.
So doing the BB gun range for many years with the Greenwood Council, we will get a big heavy duty tarp, because if you don't, the BBs will just go through and you can't really see beyond that tarp because, well, big tarp in the way. The important part is how you set up the tarp, because you can't just have it flat, because you can still have BBs come back at you. Can't have it angled at this because, well, you know. So you got to kind of have a, sorry, brain fart, downward angle, so BBs, when they hit, they can go to the ground and not back towards the kids. There have been a couple times where I've had to adjust the tarp just because a BB would come back. I would notice. Luckily, I'm the only one that noticed, because when they hit a kid, they do freak out about it.
And arranging a little trough.
Yes, a little trough to where they can collect, because people would rather you pick them up than not.
Because when you're a scout, you don't leave your garbage.
Yeah, the other thing you need to be careful for if you haven't done a lot of BB gun range running it, at where we're at, there's a trail that goes along the range to Walmart, which is behind where we're shooting. Which is awesome when someone walks through and then I gotta say cease fire and wait. Yeah, I want to do other stuff too to them, but I can't.
Yeah.
And so I have to set up caution tape. So trails over here and the road rest camps over here where people do whatever they want in scouting, just walk through right up to next to where the targets are and call it good. So I have to set up a long line of caution tape going down where I do not want people, because like I commented before, parents like to think they can do anything, and accept that is what I want. So I will set that up. I will also try and keep people from walking over to my right where that trail is. And I will do my best to make sure people know that they, again, asking permission, because a lot of people think they don't have to.
So what's the best way of keeping people walking into the range of fire?
Yell at them.
Or caution tape,
Yeah, caution tape.
ropes?
Well, we can't put caution tape on that trail. We just have to see fire.
Oh, sorry. Didn't
Yeah.
know that.
So we can't block that. We can put up signs. You can put up a sign right where the entrance and exit to that trail is, saying, "Hey, this is a live range. Are you really going to walk in front of a bunch of kids with guns?"
That's one of my favorite little sign, caution, flying arrows.
Yeah. So a lot of it's going to depend on your setup. If you're lucky enough, you don't have to worry about any of that. For our location, even for Bill, this is something that he needs to be careful of as well, because people like to do whatever they think they want, and it sucks, to be honest.
So I wanted to talk about the firing line. I think we already established there aren't any USAA formal archers here. In formal archery, there is a firing line, and everybody has 1 foot in front of and 1 foot behind that firing line.
Which is on the ground. It's not
A line drawn on the ground.
Yeah.
That's the traditional way it's done. I think we all, and BSA specifies, our scouts need to be behind a firing line. And I mean, psychologically and learning theory, we just have to have it that way. Now, you may not worry as much about younger cubs, but like I said, as they move up and all, I really strongly want to recommend a physical barrier for the firing line so that they can't step over it, okay? There's something physical there to remind them very clearly, this is the firing line. When you go to collect arrows or check your targets, you walk around the ends of the firing line, walk to your targets. When we set up our range, BB guns or archery, I have a bunch of these rebars. They have washers welded to them, and most of them all need to be repainted the bright orange. But we use these, hammer them into the ground, okay? Firing line in archery, and it would be nice if you could do this much in BB guns, but I think at least 3 feet for BB guns, 4 feet for archery. That's the width of their shooting station. These are so nice for archery because they stick up, and they stick up high enough so that the bow and the arrow really can't go further than that width. Make sense? Put colorful little tennis balls on top of all these so they don't hurt themselves, by the way. Duct tape little quivers for these so that the arrows are going there. And the bows actually do nice either leaning up against or hanging on these.
One thing I want to comment was with when you're putting the line across, keep in mind how tall that line is, because it should be just tall enough to where you get a little bit of distance from where the arrow goes past. So where these washers is actually almost perfect. Well, it is low, but it ends up
like about you know, 14 to 18 inches above the ground. And that's, I use like blue and gold rope for Cub Scouts, you know. And then, so you have the length of your firing line. Your firing area should be enclosed. Okay, some kind of posts, rope, flag lines, something, so that it is very clear this is a limited access area, period.
Not ABL 20.
And none of this is in this new book. And that bothered me a bit that they didn't do that, okay? Because it is important. It's important to know that Cub Scouts shoot at 15 feet, Boy Scouts shoot at 30 feet. You should have this set up where between the firing line and back to your back wall, there's at least 10 feet, if not 12 feet, because you have to have room for your shooters on their firing line. You have to have clear access all the time to each individual shooter. So you got to make sure you have enough room there, because if you have to get to that individual shooter, chances are you need to do it very quickly, okay? And if one of your Boy Scout assistants gets in the way, sorry, talked about it later, you have to stop whatever problem is happening because you're responsible. And now your Boy Scout assistants, as a general rule, they don't notice problems, serious problems that are starting to happen. Beyond your firing line, okay, and just like tent poles, the ends are staked up, so it's all staying straight up. You want at least 10-foot clearance on each end of your firing line. And this could be the same for BB guns, okay? Then you have some safety line that angles off into the distance. I always try to leave something so that a parent could get over there to the side and fudge a little bit going past the firing line to get that just so picture. That's about as much slack as I'll give parents. Their pictures are important, but our safety is more important, and the safety of all those kids. That trumps pictures.
And I'll comment on that. When you have your range layout, because you got your whole shooting space where everyone is, right? You need to make sure that you have a rope that goes between the entry point so that you can close that off. So
It's a gate.
Unauthorized people can't just come on the range. Now they're forced to be there. You're like, can I enter the range? You can just tell them no, and hopefully they'll go away. So, and even beyond that, you should have your own little area just to where the kids line up. A little gathering point for them, which is mainly just for them to be there and wait in line.
And they need to learn courtesy of, for one, there's quiet. There's no trying to distract the guys that are shooting, because that's a safety infraction to deliberately try to distract them. Because what do kids do? They turn around with the bow. Yeah, so can't have that. And if they're scout archers, they are of good character and would naturally line up to the side to let their buddies come out off the range, not be in their way, as well as they might learn to be saying, good job, because that's what scouts do. And to me, all of that is part of what we're teaching. Targets. Bill, I know us old-fashioned people, it's hard to get away from hay bales, isn't it? God,
Works just fine.
hay bales are just the perfect thing. You know, I stand by these paper targets, again, glued onto cardboard. I always have a stash of big cardboard, takes up a big hunk of the spare room there. Sorry, but we glue those onto cardboard. Like I said, one round of those, that'll last a week. They're not worth much for using again after that, but they will last a week. Okay, and I think it adds to. And Rob, please hear this loud and clear. those things are not that expensive. And the value they present to the kids, the extra motivation, the pride, okay? How do you put a price tag on that? Okay.
I got one more thing to add that you haven't mentioned. So you know your regular target blocks, like the one you can barely see
Got
there.
one there.
Okay, so if you have a younger kid using a weaker bow, that arrow will most likely maybe not stick in that target. It's just going to bounce off. So if you get these and put your cardboard on it and just pin it on a hay bale, it will stick pretty darn majority of the time, even if it's a weak bow. It'll be there just kind of hanging limp, but it's in there. That kid can see where he hit. With those big blocks, it's hard to tell if it's going to stick or not if they don't pull back far enough.
The one thing I'm seeing for sale online nowadays, the old traditional FITA targets they now make them with that self-healing gel in the big rounds that you put up on a tripod, and they're only like 4 inches thick. They're still kind of expensive, but they're coming down in price. I bought a few little ones. They're way too little, but I'm going to experiment with those. I'm always trying to look at exactly how much carpet or whatever could I put behind this target that would be safe. Because sometimes it's getting harder to get a hold of hay bales or straw bales. And they are a lug around. Going out to Malacca is a little bit more work with those. But so thoughts, how do you all put your ranges together?
I got a question for you. How many should we have on the line? And as far as the BB gun range, what would be I would think recommended number per bench table would be 3. Are we going to do anything special or anything different with the COVID saying, trying to get even more distant?
That depends on your current COVID rules for your area. Now, I think you're Douglas County, right?
Correct.
Okay. Your Douglas County rules may be a little bit different than Lane County at the time, because Lane County's worse off than you guys,
Yeah.
which is sad.
You're up and
You guys
down.
are doing something right.
Not reporting them.
The maximum number of shooters you can have on a line is 8. Now, saying that, so the maximum ratio of supervision would be 1 instructor, 1 RSO to 8 shooters. Now, do I feel comfortable doing archery out there with 8 shooters? No, and I won't. I generally, I'll stop at 6. Bill?
We've been doing 6 for probably 10 to 15 years.
Yeah.
Works out quite nicely.
6 seems to be a good manageable number. Now, when it comes to Boy Scouts and 22s, we're at 8. There's at least 2 of us. But I don't think there's as many danger variables as with the Cubs here. I know in a way that sounds backwards, but I was just saying to Jamie, in shooting sports, they really, really want to do this. And they really, really want to do it right. And they really, really want to make you happy with their performance. And
Well, I found with the BB gun range, whether it's hay bales or bench, usually you'll see the boys pretty much side by side. There's hardly any room, which really maybe we should scatter them out just a little bit more anyway.
In general, I would give each shooter, I think Jonathan and I were just saying, at least 3 feet for BB gun shooters.
The problem with COVID is you're going to have to do something different. So no matter what you're going to do, you need to put a marker on that spot so everything goes to that spot. I think a stick would work pretty well, because
paint can.
If they do a paint can on the ground, that's going to stay there. And if you got your tarp or canvas over top and you paint the canvas, that's just going to move. So if you put a stake on the other side of the hay bale, that is their spot, and they'll be on
Well,
right to the left of the stage.
Again, these kind of guys showing your boundaries.
Anyways, that's
Yeah.
what I think about it. So again, with the COVID thing, it's going to be a pain in the butt. But,
Just, you gotta
yeah.
pay attention to that this year. I hope it's going away. I really do. I pray that it's going away, but I'm not so sure.
I'm working on day 2 of my second shot. It's fun so far.
It is something to be aware of. The number of shooters, you're responsible. And you have to make a responsible decision with the instruction resource you have and safety personnel resource you have. How many shooters can you do today?
Mhm.
You know, I'll tell you, at our Cub Day Camp with just the Webelos, which we get some bears and, you know, mixed in bears and wolves, but for the most part, they're Webelos. There's particular groups, and by the third day, you know who it is. And you're like, oh God, they're coming. Okay? How much can you afford to do with that group?
I typically look at my assistants.
That's true. I'm wondering with the Lions having to have definitely, and they should. Well, of course, I suppose with BB guns, the Lions can't be shooting BB guns, but the Tigers still need that one-on-one too.
They need one-on-one. And that's not just the parental supervision either. They need an instructor for each kid. So you may have your 6 stations ready, but for that group, you're only gonna do 2 kids at a time because they have to be one-to-one.
Right.
And you have to be flexible with that.
Yeah, because there again, you don't know exactly how many you're gonna have till day camp starts, as far as the younger ones. And
Yeah. Well, and getting an idea from the program director, I always talk with Debbie of, you know, what am I looking at? Are there any, you know, I'll ask her, are there any big problem groups? And she'll say, you know, there are. But she has a good
I'm really
idea.
impressed, and I think the girls in the program, of course, girls pay attention more than boys anyway. They just grow up, they just understand they need to pay attention. Boys, they think it all.
I find the girls are better
Good
marksmen.
example.
I'll just say this. The kids are way better than a parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
One comment I think I do kind of want to make, because we're kind of talking about what we do with the kids on the range. Sorry, I keep thinking about those targets, and I remember when they first came out, and I was like, this is so stupid. If
The new targets.
Yeah, the new targets. The Tiger Cubs basically get a dinner plate for a bullseye. I will let the kids.
They need it.
Yeah, I will let the kids choose their target. I'll lay them out, and typically I'll say, well, this is your rank, so go with that. But if I see a kid that's doing better, like obviously, like they're listening to the instruction, they're being a good shot and a good student, I'll say, hey, dude, try this target. And I will have paper plates. And the other thing I do, because if you looked at the requirements to pass, it's basically just do better than what you did. Going with all those things that I've been looking for, good student, good listener, and good shot, I'll say, hey, remind me, and I got some shooting you guys can do Friday, because Friday is fun day. And with those kids that do really well, I will teach them standing, kneeling, and prone. Yes, I am harder on them for it
Well,
when they make a mistake.
Webelos have to do
Right, they
3
do.
positions.
But I like to do that and reward them, because nowadays, as we're going on, everyone's getting the participation trophy. And obviously, we have shooters that are progressing better or already doing better. So I like to make sure everyone's happy on the range with even the layout and everything that goes on with them just being there by the hay bale. And it's a pain to do that, but it's nice when you get the experience to see how you can do better.
it's a pain, but taking notes through the week, looking for, everybody loves to see a top shot award, you know, on Friday or Saturday at the exit picnic there. Trying to identify that person, that can be really difficult. And that's why, to me, I want to make sure I have some immediate reinforcement in my pocket that I give them right then and there. That top shot award, or I don't know if you want to break it down into 2 or 3, but some kind of big award, because those kids that it may not even necessarily be they worked harder, they are just naturally gifted at shooting, yet they should get some recognition for that. Just like the kid who's the top artist. I was always, because I try to do anything artistic, and it looks like garbage, right? No. So, to the back of the manual, you have an appendix full of posters. I think most of them are good. I want to say the general shooting range rules, it's all well and good to post this. That does not replace your covering safety rules in your range safety briefing. You're not allowed to just figure, well, there's the safety rules. That's not safe enough. Really good one on the eye dominance. Again, a nice full colored picture. Good one for aligning sights. You know, at their level, if they want to learn more about that, they can look that over. I'm back into page, there you are. It is good stuff. Is it worthy of keeping them away from the BB guns to go over that? I don't think so. You got to minimize that in your talk time. They need to know about it, okay? But we're not going to make them true experts from day camp. The parts of the guns and parts of the bows, the Eddie Eagle. I was going to comment on this. They don't call it Eddie Eagle in the BSA program, okay? Myself and anyone has access to NRA Program Materials. If you Google NRA Program Materials, you'll go right to the site. Many things are restricted. You have to be a certified instructor to buy them. Eddie Eagle coins are one of the things that are not. God, I even looked for my bag. I have a bag of these coins somewhere. I usually have a couple in my pocket. And just walking around camp, kids will come up and I'll say, okay, can you tell me the 4 things? And if they can tell me those 4 things, I give them an Eddie Eagle coin, okay? Those coins might be 10 or 25 cents a piece, I don't know, but they're worth millions to the kid. Again, your range commands. As an individual instructor, I would want to consider whether I want to post these range commands or not. Yeah, there's an Eddie Eagle coin. Tell you what, we can go into a school and do that program, and the kids, they won't even be thinking it necessarily had anything about guns. But if they ever see a gun, they're going to do what Eddie Eagle said to do. It's big. These range commands, consider whether or not these printed commands, how consistent are they with your commands. If they're not consistent enough, don't post them. Because you need to cover your range commands anyway in your range briefing, okay? Suggested BB gun. The first 3 here, the always, 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 fundamental rules of safe gun handling. There's a lot of good posters. It's really best, I think, to separate those 3 on one poster, because it's the chances that a kid is going to remember 3 things is way better than remembering 6 or 8 things. And those 3 things really do stand alone now, okay? And you have to always say always. Every word in these is very carefully chosen.
With that 3, Brian, you can always put it back into those.
Got it?
Always, always, always. Ooh.
Just the kind of, it just goes so well with scouting. They really do have good poster on the shooting positions as well. I don't know how many of you have experience with firearms and shooting positions. There's no difference between these and firearms positions. So they are very, very appropriate for Webelos in particular to be working on. I usually, like, if we do the merit badge with a troop, I will offer them, you know, do you guys want to schedule a time where you come out and we'll work on 4 position next? And they'll come out and we will work on all 4 positions. Usually wait till, you know, Boy Scouts with that, with rifles. But and the standing offhand, or what they call it, free arm, that's the most difficult. And just like I was saying about archery, one motion, that is not meant for hold the gun up to your shoulder and stand there for 5 minutes, because most people can't do that, even with something as light as a BB gun. Then, do you got pictures of the targets there, Rob? These are full-size targets that you can print off, okay? Again, for a BB gun, you know, I think it's quite realistic. When you get to archery, we need something that's 3 feet or 80 centimeters wide, because we're really going to hope they're at least going to hit paper on their first shot. That's what works best. Again, it gets the archery range rules and commands. As an instructor, you need to review this before you post it. You don't want to post 2 whistle blasts, 1 blast, 3 blasts, 5 or more whistle blasts. You can't post that and then only do 2 whistle blasts. I would err toward, don't post this, but do 2 whistle blasts. Keep it simple. Range commands from there are very simply stated exactly what to do, and say it the same way every time. Now, the general range rules there, they might be worthy of posting. This always walk on the range. They do have it number 1 there. I would deliberately expand that to the no running or horseplay on or near any shooting range. Horseplay even. The hot afternoon. How many of y'all been there? Hot afternoon. The Cubs have been running, going crazy all day long. Now they come over here to archery, where they're supposed to slow down and pay attention. Their ability to do that, to change gears, I always see that as very commendable. And I pointed out to them that you learn to do that, you're in control of you. And that's what we're trying to teach you. Even 1 kid starts horseplaying. It's almost instantaneous. You lost control of the whole group. Like I was saying earlier, there's some of those groups you can count on. If it's after lunch, that period, yes, you're going to try to maintain control of your range, but it may be entirely likely for that group that they're not going to get anything out of this. And their hearts are only going to be halfway in it. And that's unfortunate. You know, I think the shooting does better in the morning before they've gotten worn out and tired and crazy. Don't let them start horseplaying. Does anybody disagree with that? Emergencies on the range, you need to, that's really a matter of close coordination with your camp team. Another hit for range assistance. I'm talking 2 range assistants and you. If there's an injury, you can dispatch one of your assistants to get that kid to the medical tent. The rest of the kids go right on with the program. And it's not that they're being disrespectful to their buddy that got hurt. Fingers and hands get pinched with BB guns. Fingers get sliced because they always want to put that index finger over the arrow. Things happen, okay? There's a string burn on a forearm. The kid really does need to go get some ice and solar cane on that. And if you don't have enough staff on your range, then everybody has to stop to deal with that one person. Now, yes, that person is important enough to be dealing with, but if you have an adequate number of assistants, like I said, particularly 15 years old, get them in here to this training. Not only will they be excellent range masters, but I'll tell you what, we can start taking them into the NRA program and they will be good as gold for the summer camps. I think your Eagle Scouts really make your best camp shooting sports directors. And that's a resource we really have to be thinking about. Again, I don't know about you guys, Bill, I know you're way older than me, but I feel like I'm getting old. I got to be replaced. I'm working on it. There's one on archery shooting form here, as if written words, even without pictures, is going to tell you all about the archery shooting form. Does everybody feel like they got it when I was demonstrating? Take your shooting positions. Let's see shooting stance. Pick up your bows. Set your grip. Reach over the bow. Pull an arrow up over the bow onto the knock bead. Odd colored feather pointing up. That's your index feather. There's always an odd feather. That one points up. Okay? And they are, and then ready stance. If that, I don't even care what they learn beyond that. If they learn that sequence, I know they're going to do pretty good at archery and they're going to be safe. So if any of you have questions about that, want more demonstration, whatever, get a hold of me, please. I think Rob may have put it out there. Brian Phillips 261 at gmail.com. Okay. 541-915-1071. And particularly if we can be getting, these teenage helpers involved and trained. Very important. Types of archery bows makes for a nice poster, except I argue against advertising the compound bow so much. Once a kid gets good, they get their archery merit badge as a Boy Scout. By all means, kid, try a compound bow. Try a 70-pound recurve bow. Try them all. Do the best you can. Keep moving forward. But they do need to learn the fundamentals first. Slingshot range commands, okay. The question would be, how many slingshot shooters do you have on the range ratio to supervision? Having done it out at Baker, I wouldn't do more than 2 slingshot shooters at a time, and 1-to-1, period. A whole bunch of stuff. They even have always on slingshots, okay? And that's consistent with, I think it applies to anything you can throw, launch, or fire. parts of a slingshot. Now, at the end here, there is some more good stuff that you could copy. And these are the Pack Advancement Awards, okay? It's like each pack should have this to track each shooter, okay? Knowing about organization levels, they're going to need you to provide them with this, okay? You might have a Johnny on the spot camp director like Debbie that prepares all that ahead of a time too. She'll even photocopy the awards and come by with a stack for me to sign. I don't care, one way or another. It is very important to me that they get their awards because they should. They earned them, okay? That's what we're about. Then all the additional activities, you can welcome to read all that for fun. One of the things I've always wanted to do, never had the time or resource to put it together, is an archery bike-a-thon, either running-thon or bike-a-thon, where like a field archery course where you have different target setups, okay? And they either run or bicycle to the different stations, and they park their bike and run over and do that shot. Maybe they have 2 or 3 chances, whichever, to make that shot, get their points written down, and then they rush off to the next station. They don't carry the shooting equipment with them. That's dealt with at each station. You know, doing something like that, I think, would be absolutely phenomenal. I think it would take summer camp to be able to do that. And that would have to be a, you know, a special thing. But it sure would be cool. Shooting arrows up into the air. Does everyone realize there are actually arrows that are designed for shooting up in the air? They're called flu arrows. And they are a very old-fashioned thing. They have a spiral feathering on the back. And that feathering, it makes the arrows spin, but it also slows them down. So they're not going ballistic and you don't have control over where they go. Rather than doing that ballistic missile game, they're really were designed for shooting birds with archery, which, hey, I ain't anywhere near that skill, and I have never seen a scout that, well, Daniel might be pretty darn near. I'm sorry, but my son Daniel is the best archer I've ever seen. And he doesn't even have that much interest in it. He feels pretty big britches about that. So that really comes to the end of the book. I want to encourage you all, if you're not big on, you know, carrying around at least a pad with you, maybe print it out so you have it. Have a copy of the BSA Shooting Sports Manual, current copy, and read it when you have time, because it's important, and the Guide to Safe Scouting, which again, accessed by internet, is important to get the latest changes, because there's really important stuff, and there's grid in there about what age groups can do what activity. And that is the most common question I've ever heard come up. You know, what can these Boy Scouts do? What can these venturers do, etc.? Well, it's printed. Just have to go find it.
Brian, I just popped the link to the BSA site for outdoor program shooting sports. That's got the National Shooting Sports Manual as a PDF. It's also got this manual that we're going through today. It's got the just shot out of my head. What am I looking for? the appendix, the shooting sports
Yeah.
manual supplement, because there have been some changes. So that's also listed there as well.
With those new disciplines, those are in those supplements. And I think it's good, if you're going to go on to Boy Scout stuff, which I really hope everybody does, it'd be a good idea to start learning about those different disciplines, because it is cool that, you know, they have option of doing some of this stuff after they've learned the fundamentals. I can't say that enough. They've got to learn these fundamentals, especially including the safety fundamentals first. Then they can go on and do all kinds of other stuff.
Rob, can you put that website back up on the screen?
Sure can. Here, let me.
Go, Rob.
I got part of it. I just want to make sure I get it right.
So it's in your chat. I'm gonna pop it up again, but all you have to do is in Zoom, click on your chat window and you'll see it there.
Oh, okay, on the chat window.
Yep.
Okay.
Is the guide to safe scouting in there too, Rob, or is that's not a PDF?
It is not on this page.
I think if you even Google it, you'll get it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I myself, I review that thing here and there, probably not enough. But there's a lot of people poo-poo that guide to safe scouting, and it's not poo-poo literature. It's extremely important.
Okay, and here's a link to Guide to Safe Scouting. Pop that up there too for everybody. There you go. Scouting.org/health and safety GSS, Guide Safe Scouting. Yeah, and if you Google Guide to Safe Scouting, it pops right up.
And I'll say again, anybody, you're welcome to email me, call me, keep in touch, whichever. I will fill out your cards. Now, know something about your cards. This is forevermore. I think some of you already know it very clear. When you're out running your range, that card has to be in your pocket. By the rules, anybody, at least any adult, can come along, observe your range, and question your safety practices. And right off the get-go, if they ask for your shooting sports identification, you are obligated to present that. And if you don't even have it in your pocket, well, you just started a bad day. Have it in your pocket. This is why we have this training. You go out, you work as per the training to the best of your knowledge and ability, and you are safe liability. You go out and just do your own thing for the hell of it, you're not safe for anything. BSA does not cover you. The insurance doesn't cover you. You're on your own. This is the one, believe me, even in all the NRA trainings, it's very common. People want to get the card and go do their own thing. But it doesn't work that way. You got to have insurance by you. As long as you're following the rules, BSA will back you up all the way. Have the card in your pocket. And Rob will have your list connected with a bunch of other lists. Actually, this list should start whoever's current now, Rob, because we've been 2 years without a training.
Yep.
This training only goes 2 years. So you guys are it. Nobody else is legal to run Cub Scout shooting sports. Isn't that scary?
Yeah, mine ran out April 1st.
Well, you're good for another 2 years now. I would hope in the future, I'm probably at least going to continue doing this stuff because I mean, Cub Scouts are near and dear to my heart. They really are. If without these Cub Scouts, we might as well give it up, you know, and hopefully all of you will step into being even more involved. You know, let's spread the culture, as it were. Any questions? It's always hard to believe. They really not have any questions, or they just tired. We actually did this in 3 hours. That's a record. Do you all, and I really need this feedback, do you all feel that this format, okay, I think you all have been certified before, right?
Right.
Do you feel that this format has covered you enough, you feel confident that you're covered for another 2 years?
I feel confident.
I feel confident. I appreciate going through this every 2 years because there's new things and you know, it's good for us.
Yeah. Hey, not to mention hooray for Lions, right? Well, when I first read that Lions didn't get to shoot, that made me mad. I mean, that's not fair.
I can't believe that they allow Lions to shoot archery and not BB. It just, I don't understand that. I really don't. It just.
Well, on my range, Lions can shoot with adequate supervision and instruction. And in my
I think
mind,
that's the way it should be.
that group needs 1-to-1. And it does say in here, Lions and Tigers should be 1-to-1. Now, they kind of leave room to fudge on the adult partner, which I don't think is okay to fudge on, because you have no idea what that adult knows. And I think we all know the lion knows more than their parent. So, all right. Well, Rob, I think you sent me the list. I might have to get a new page of cards, but if I have everybody's address, I'll mail you your cards. I would imagine there's going to need to be more range masters than this. We talked about one, like Laura Pinella's an example. We may have to do one to catch some more of those. So in your all neighboring areas, you know, take some responsibility and inquire, are there range masters available to do this? And if there are they certified? And if they didn't attend this training in this council, they're not certified. So, and Rob is now certified. That's scary. Yeah, Rob, you're going to be teaching this at all the day camps. You're not doing that, right?
Well, every time I've gone to run a range, I had to call your sons to come help me. They've always been there.
And they always love it. Yeah. Well, they listened from day one, you know. So unless everybody just wants to chat, I think we're done. It's always a pleasure to have such a good group together. So,
Brian, I'll go into that list that I sent you. I'll look up the emails or the addresses for folks and add that and resend that list to you.
okay, I would appreciate that.
That way, yeah, because you've got phone numbers and emails. You don't have mailing addresses. So everybody's mailing address in ScoutNet accurate?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because that's where I'm pulling it from. Ryan, yours is updated, right?
Could be.
Okay. Perfect. I'll go in and just copy and paste those in and resend that to you, Brian.
Good enough. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Enjoy your weekend. Starts now.